Hello everyone. My name is Matthew T Ellman. I'm from Bulgaria and I'm responsible for the foreign languages. And it is a great pleasure to meet you all here in our second webinar with our guest speaker from Cambridge University Press, Peter Lucantoni. Hi, Peter. Peter is here with us. The topic is who do we think they are? And Peter has been a teacher, he has been a director, and now he's professional learning and development manager in Cambridge University Press. And Peter, I give you the word.
Okay, thank you very much, Maya. Good morning again, everybody. I'm looking in the chat box, lots of hellos. I recognize some of the names from last week. I hope I do a better job today of pronouncing your names, or at least deciphering some of your names. So I'm sure Maya will help me out if I have any problems. So we're gonna stay with talking about teenagers, but today we're going to look a little bit at understanding a bit more about teenagers and what makes teenagers click, and what is it that we can do as teachers to help students to develop their language skills. So that the title of today is Who Do We Think They Are? And this is all about reaching and teaching teenagers. So you know who I am. This is me. I won't go through all of this again. I'm sure you can remember from last week. So let's go straight into our agenda, the things we're going to talk about for the next hour and a half or so. First of all, we're going to have a think about our opinions about teaching teenagers. And I know we can be a little bit ambivalent about this. If you know what ambivalent means, it means sometimes we like it, sometimes we don't like it. So we're going to have a think about how we feel about teaching teenagers. We're also going to talk about what motivates teenagers for learning English. And I think there's probably, we're going to find that there are both intrinsic, internal motivations, as well as extrinsic, external motivations for teenagers learning English. We're going to have a look at some ideas how we can create the right conditions for motivating learners. And we're also going to evaluate these ideas. And as last week, you know, please do use the chat box, not just to say hello, but also to ask me questions and also to answer my questions, of which there are going to be many. So let's start off with thinking about our opinions about teaching teenagers. And I want to use the 3-2-1 activity. I think we did this last week as well, but this is a nice opportunity to see it again in a slightly different way. So first of all, in our 3-2-1 activity, what I'd like you to do is to think about the things that you enjoy about teaching teenagers. 3 things that you enjoy about teaching teenagers. And I suggest that you immediately put them into the chat box, because it always takes time, doesn't it, for things to appear in the chat box. So what do you enjoy about teaching teenagers? Put your ideas in the chat box. And Maria says that teenagers are funny, interesting, and motivating. Yeah, very positive way to start off. Yeah, and Magdalena also very positive about the teenagers are active and they respond quickly. And somebody whose name I can't pronounce, I apologize, says that they could be creative. And Svoboda says, good morning. Good morning. Any other ideas? Again, another name I can't pronounce, I'm afraid. I don't know.
Rosita.
Creativity, new technology, and again we've got the word creative coming through. Yeah, brilliant, excellent. So I think there's lots of positives, aren't there, about teaching teenagers. What about some top tips for teaching teenagers? Top tips for teaching teenagers. What would you say, for example, to a new teacher? Denitsa, be patient. Brilliant. I mean, I think that's true of all teaching, isn't it? No matter who you're teaching, you need to be patient. But I think with teenagers, it's probably even more important. Somebody mentions their cool ideas, patience and understanding. Yeah, good. Any other top tips? I think we're going back to the things that you enjoy, but and Maria also mentions humor is important. Yeah, well, we've got frankness and creativity and spontaneity. Maria says yes. Yeah. Okay. Any other top tips for teaching teenagers? Be creative and talk to their language. That's really nice, Ivor, isn't it? Yeah. Sort of getting to their level so that you can build up a relationship with them. And Magdalena talks about being a good listener and respect. Yeah, respecting teenagers' opinions. And again, we've got the idea of being a good listener. Okay. And then the last one, a question about teaching teenagers. Any questions that you have about teaching teenagers? Hopefully it's a question that will be answered during our session this morning. Yeah, I wish I could say your name. How to motivate them. I can't decipher that one.
It is Desisłava, Peter. Desisłava. Desisłava.
Okay, I'll just call you Desi. Okay, I think that's a very important one, isn't it? It's about how to motivate them. And it is one of the things we're going to be talking about today. And Maria says, why? Is that, oh, I see. Sometimes they get bored. So why do they get bored? Yeah. And Bree, I don't know how to say that, but how to talk their language. Okay, I think these are really good questions. And I'm not 100% sure we'll answer them fully today, but I think we will go some way towards answering those questions. Okay, I'm going to start with a quote. And what I'd like you to do is to tell me when you think somebody said this. When do you think somebody said this? And maybe you can guess who said it as well, but that would be really difficult. But when do you think somebody said this? And there's lots more questions coming into the chat box, so thank you very much for those. And I think we will be addressing these things. So when do you think this was said? The children now love luxury. They have bad manners, contempt for authority. They show disrespect for elders, and they love chatter in place of exercise. And Svoboda says ancient Greece. How did you know that? Have you seen this workshop before? But of course, it is absolutely ancient Greece. It was Socrates, 4,500 years ago. So I think, you know, we often think that children have become horrible in the 21st century, but, you know, Socrates 4,500 years ago was saying exactly the same thing. Children now love luxury. In other words, children are materialistic. They like all of the good things in life. They like to have the latest smartphone and the latest Adidas training shoes and clothes and so on and so forth. Bad manners and contempt for authority, no respect, disrespect for their parents and their teachers. And they just like to talk, to chatter instead of doing exercise. So basically nothing new with the teenagers that we're working with today. Okay, here's a second quote. What about this one? When do you think this was said? When I was a boy of 14, my father was so ignorant, I could hardly stand to have the old man around. But when I got to be 21, I was astonished at how much the old man had learned in 7 years. I think that's brilliant. But when do you think it was said? Any ideas? Any guesses? "19th century, says Svoboda. Not a bad guess. Any idea who said it? That's lovely, Dennis. I think we've probably all said it. We've all been a bit suspicious of our parents, whether it's your father or your mother, and it's only when you get older that you begin to appreciate them a lot more. This was actually Mark Twain, the American author, a couple of 100 years ago. He said that.
Borislava has the right answer.
Oh, yes, she does. Yes, yeah. I'm sorry we don't have any prizes. I wish we had a prize to give you, but just feel good for the rest of the day. I think Dickens is also a very good guess, Swoboda, but yeah, it was Mark Twain. Okay, so I think what I've tried to do is basically show that the way teachers are today is not a new thing. They've always been like it. We just sort of think that it's a new phenomenon that teenagers are the way they are. But I think this issue with teenagers, the lack of motivation and the challenges that we face, has been around forever. So let's shift our attention then to teenage motivation. Why do teenagers actually learn English? So give me a few ideas in the chat box. Why do teenagers learn English? What motivates them to learn English? So Maria begins with work, definitely. Hopefully teenagers are thinking ahead to employment opportunities. Then it's social media, yeah, to be able to explore TikTok. We've got academic, again, the social side, meeting friends. English is everywhere, so they need it daily. Yeah, communication. So I think we've got 2 or 3 different areas of motivation here. We've got work, employment, we've got studying, university, we've got the social side as well, both online and in person, and generally for communication with people. I was very lucky. I was in Prague last week at a Cambridge day on Saturday, and it's the first time I've worked in Prague. But I was amazed at the quality and the level of language from the people I met. And I don't just mean the teachers, but I mean in the hotel, the taxi drivers, the restaurants. The level of English was extremely high. So the points that you're making about accessing information and the universality of English are obviously very, very, very true. So this is Jeremy, and I'd just like you to read the profile of Jeremy. I'll just give you 30 seconds or so. So probably you would label, if you like, Jeremy as a good student. He's the type of student that we want because he's enthusiastic. He loves coming to school. He loves learning. He shows interest and motivation in the classroom. He even asks for homework. You know, teacher, give me more homework. I want to do more, because he can probably see the things that you've said in the chat box about his future, about his education, about possible employment, about social media, and so on. And he gets involved in the classroom. He talks to other students in the classroom, and he wants to be involved in group work. And very importantly, the next bullet on the screen is that he understands about learning. He understands what he needs to do in order to learn, and he knows what his goals are. He knows where he's trying to get to, and at the same time he also understands his weaknesses, and he wants to get feedback from the teacher, but also from other students as well. So he is what you might call the ideal or the model student. Obviously, what I'm going to do now is show you another type of student, but before I show you the other type of student, very quickly in the chat box, can you write me a few thoughts about the other students? Jeremy is our ideal good student, but we also have plenty of students who are not ideal. So what are the characteristics of my next student? Her name is Christina, by the way. So I'm going to show you Christina in a minute, but before I show you Christina, tell me what her profile is. She doesn't do her homework. Yes, good. She's disinterested and lazy. Yeah. Typical teenage girl. Yeah. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah. Good. Yeah, as Christina says, it's pretty much the exact opposite of Jeremy. Of course it is. Yeah. Having difficulties in grammar and vocab, lovely. Yeah, shy, demotivated, etc., etc., etc. All right. You're probably thinking that it should be the other way around. It should be Christina, who's the model student, and Jeremy, who's not. But I deliberately switched them, so I thought it's time for boys to be good in the classroom. So here's Christina, as you say, pretty much the opposite. She feels that she's forced to come to classes. There's some sort of extrinsic motivation forcing her to come to class. She's not interested in doing her homework. She'd rather go shopping. She'd rather go on TikTok. Very difficult for her to study in an independent manner. Once she leaves the classroom, that's it. English is over. English is finished. Not interested in engaging in the classroom because the topics don't interest her. Maybe she's not really friendly with anybody in the classroom. She's not interested in the content, as I say. She's not interested. She finds it demotivating. Sorry, I'm just looking at the chat box. She knows why she's in the classroom. She knows why she's there because she needs to get her high school diploma, I suppose. But she's really not very interested in improving. And I'm laughing because Maria in the chat is saying most of her students are like that, which is a bit sad, really, isn't it? But hopefully I'm sure you're a brilliant teacher, Maria, and you're doing your best to make Christina into more of a Jeremy. So, of course, my question is, do you have a Jeremy or a Christina or in any of your classes, or possibly you've got students who are actually in the middle. They're a bit of Jeremy and they're a bit of Christina. Maybe it depends on the day of the week. Maybe it depends on the unit in the book. And I think it's important that we consider that because I'm sure, yes, we do have a Jeremy at this extreme and a Christina at this extreme. But I hope that most students are actually somewhere in the middle. They have good days, they have bad days, they have good lessons, they have bad lessons, because they're humans and we all have good days and bad days. I'm sure, you know, as teachers, you have good days and bad days, and some days you're not motivated, you're not interested, you can't see the point. But then on another day, things are completely different. So I think what we need to ask ourselves, first of all, is what are their motivations for learning English? So if you're Jeremy, what do you think is Jeremy's motivation for learning English? What motivates Jeremy to learn English? I wish I was with you in a classroom so that we could talk to each other. It's so much better, wouldn't it, than waiting for your answers online. I could be, you know, saying, yes, you. What motivates Jeremy? Yeah, nice. He wants to improve and he has a goal. Very important. Yeah, I think those two really go together. I think first thing is goal. And I know we talked about goals last week and how important they are, but he's also thinking about his future and getting a good job and maybe thinking about university as well. So there's an enormous amount of intrinsic motivation there. He's doing this for himself because he wants to develop, he wants to get on, he wants to improve himself. Yeah, great. And what about Christina? What's her motivation for learning English? Nothing, says Denise. But she has to be there. So what's the motivation for her? With Jeremy, it's very intrinsic. He wants to do it. But what about Christina? Where's her motivation coming from? Yeah, exactly. It's an extrinsic motivation, isn't it? She's being forced to do it. You know, the government says she has to go to school and she has to learn English. So there's nothing that she can do about it. The problem, of course, is that she doesn't have the intrinsic motivation, and that's where all the negativity comes into it. She needs more encouragement, definitely. Her parents give her money, very possibly. It does happen, doesn't it? Love gains parents' control. Yeah, exactly. You're getting the idea. The difference is that Jeremy has this very strong intrinsic motivation, whereas Christina lacks that, and we have to rely on extrinsic motivation. If you like, you know, the stick that we need to use. The metaphorical stick, not a real stick. But why do they feel like this? What is it that makes Jeremy and Christina feel this way about learning? Any ideas? Why does Jeremy feel like this? What creates that strong intrinsic motivation? Certainly results and different interests. Yeah, I think results are very important, aren't they? Because if you're doing well and you're getting good results, then of course your motivation levels rocket. Absolutely. Yeah, very good. And on the other hand, with Christina, if she's not doing so well, if she's not getting good results, then of course her motivation is diving. There is a lot to, is that Sevic is talking about upbringing, parental, the family side of things. Maybe there's no sort of culture of language learning in the family, and therefore it doesn't transfer itself to the children. And definitely different personalities are very important here. Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's Christina, is talking about background. Yep, family results and students around, etc., etc. Good. Okay. Last point here. Last question. What are we going to do about it? What do we do as teachers about Jeremy and Christina? How can we respond to their motivational needs? What do we do? What can we do, if anything? There's lots of writing going on. Yeah, we can help to build their confidence, give them good marks. Yeah, I think we've got to be a bit careful about just dishing out good marks if it, based on nothing. I think, yes, we can give good marks, but I think they have to have earned them up to a point. Yeah, be more personal, give them support. Yeah, find out what their motivations are. Talk to them, discuss things with them. Yeah. Yeah, and I can see really nice ideas coming in here, being there for them. And who's this? Milena talks about autonomy, helping the students to become more autonomous. Yeah, I think we're going to talk about this in today's session. Yeah, collaboration skills, communication skills. Yeah, and Denitsa, you've made a very nice comment, haven't you, about making the subject as interesting as we possibly can for the students. And positivity keeps coming through as well. Okay, great. So if we just put all of that together, I think one of the key motivations for learning English, and this is very much an intrinsic motivation, a lot of children like English. Whether they're good at it or not is a different thing. But I think if you genuinely like something, then you're much more likely to be motivated and to enjoy it, even if you're not, particularly successful or good at it. If you like something, then I think that's going a long way to being successful and, of course, motivated. I think also, and you've mentioned this earlier, is that English is a global language. Whether you like that or not is a different thing, but it means that students are able to open up the social side of their lives, and they're able to talk and chat online, with people from other countries, or maybe tourists coming to a student's country. So it really does open up international doors. We've also mentioned that English is going to help students in the future, whether it's for work or education or travel. Yes, on a slightly more negative side, maybe students are, parents are forcing children to study English. I guess you could blame the government, really, because it's the government that says you've got to learn English at school until you're, I don't know what it is with you, but I guess it's up to about 16. It's probably compulsory to learn English, and then it's up to students. But maybe it's at that point that parents say, but you have to continue learning English. So this forcing of students to study can have a negative impact on motivation. And as I've said, there's also the government issue with learning English. So what other motivations are there? Can you think of anything else that might motivate a student for learning English? Apart from all the things we've already said, is there anything else that might motivate a student for learning English? Eleanor also mentions that about internal, intrinsic motivation. But what else? What else might motivate somebody to learn? Yeah, traveling. Yeah. And being appreciated by other people. I think that's really important. Yeah. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with showing off a little bit, is there? Yeah. Access to technology. Good. Yeah. We've got the travel element here and playing again. That's a lovely one, isn't it? Is that Biljana? And somebody else whose name I can't pronounce. Yeah, being able to understand lyrics of a favorite band, or even, you know, watching a movie and not having to rely on subtitles, but being able to understand. Yeah, I think all of those are very obvious motivations. And probably, I mean, I don't know because I have no idea, but I suspect that those last few that are coming in are some of the strongest motivations. I'll just read one more. Their own success when they get better and better, and I appreciate it and give them the chance to show their abilities. Absolutely. Great. Good. All right. So far, what we've done is we've had to think about our thoughts and also our opinions about teaching teenagers. We've looked at top tips and the things that we like about teaching teenagers. And we've also had a little think about why teenagers learn English and why their motivations differ. So very quickly in the chat box, what's the most interesting or useful or surprising point so far? Has anything come up that you found particularly interesting or useful or surprising? Oh, nobody's typing. That's not very good. My motivation level has just dropped. I'm feeling terrible now. I'm going to switch off and go and have a coffee. Somebody's writing. Yeah. Students' motivation. Mentioning the government was strange to me. Yeah, I guess it is a little bit strange, but at the end of the day, if the government says you have to learn English and maths, then you have to learn English and maths, whether you like it or not. So that's a very strong extrinsic motivational force, isn't it? Diana mentions traveling abroad. Okay, great. So let's have a think about what we can do in the classroom to increase motivation in our students. And I think it's worth pointing out here also that when student motivation is increased, I think our motivation as teachers increases, doesn't it? If you can see that your students are having a good time, if you can see that your students are enjoying it and they're motivated, then I think as teachers, our motivation goes up as well. It's true in everything we do, isn't it? I mean, I don't teach very much now, but I do an enormous amount of work with teachers, you know, teacher training. And if I can see that my audience is interested and engaged in what I'm talking to them about, then, you know, my motivation goes up as well. So keep the comments coming in the chat box, because the more comments that come into the chat box, the more motivated and excited I feel about what we're doing together today. So, number one. Right from the beginning of a course, let's get students' input on what we're going to be doing during the academic year. So on your screen, you can see part of the menu from Think for Bulgaria, A2 level. And my question is, how could you use the course book contents pages at the start of the academic year in order to increase students' motivation? Any ideas? Remember, we're talking now about ideas for increasing student engagement and student motivation. So it's September, new school year. Hello, class. This is our book for this year. What are you going to do? Hopefully, don't say, let's start at Unit 1. Somebody's writing a lot. Let them go through the book and they will show us what they're interested in and start from there. Nice comment, Alexandra. Yeah. Slight problem, of course, though, is that books tend to get progressively more difficult. So it's not always possible to jump around. But I think if you do it carefully, then it's absolutely something that you could do, Alexandra. So that's a really nice idea. And that's exactly what I'm thinking of with this question. Any other thoughts? I can see somebody else is typing. So I'll just give you another couple of minutes. Oh, it's 10:30 already. Discuss the contents and ask students if they feel interested. If not, what would they like to do or study? Yeah, I think that's Christina, is it? Yeah, looks like Christina. Yeah, I think that's another really great idea. This whole idea about involving the students in the course book, not just saying here it is, but getting students to think about the course book and to discuss the course book with them. We need to be a little bit careful. I mean, if students say we're not interested in the course book, then you're in trouble, aren't you? Because what are you going to do? But maybe particular areas of the course book. Is that Marlena? I think it's Marlena. Introduce the topics that I think will be interesting to them. Nice. Yeah. Yeah. Lovely. Yes, enriching the topics, provoking their interest. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, you get the idea. You get the idea. I think the point we're trying to make here is don't just jump into the course book and start teaching Unit 1. So on the screen, we've got just a few ideas. You've said some of these already, but you could think about creating a course book tour quiz. And it's basically what some of you were saying is to go through the book, but why not make it into a quiz? For example, what do you find at the end of every unit? How many units are there in the book? What's at the end of the course book? Where can you find the list of irregular verbs, and so on and so forth? So actually make it into a quiz. Design a worksheet so that students actually have to fill in the answers on the worksheet by going through the course book and becoming more familiar with it. It can even be more open. You could say, look at all the units and decide which is your favorite. Which one are you most looking forward to studying? Where can you find a unit which helps you to practice using the present perfect, for example? So a course book quiz, I think, is a really nice way to kick off a new school year. The second idea on the screen is something that you said in the chat box. Move around the course book based on learners' preferences. As I say, you've got to be a little bit careful because obviously course books get progressively more difficult. So if you start with Unit 10, then possibly they won't be able to do it because they need content from previous units. But maybe a lesson from a particular unit, you could say, which one would they like to do? As a teacher, when you know what their preferences are, capitalize on them. Make something of them. Show the students that you're responding to their wishes and their needs and their desires. I think the fourth one is probably one that you can easily do within a unit. Ask the students which elements within the unit they would like to do and which ones they feel are important to them. Now, we're sort of beginning to think a little bit about differentiation here. And obviously, when you're teaching a class of students with a course book, it can be quite challenging for teachers to differentiate. But as a teacher, you know your students better than anybody, and you need to keep asking yourselves, do all of my students need to do that exercise? Do all of my students need to complete that particular task? Maybe they don't, in which case, why are they all doing it? Differentiate a little bit. Okay, you students, you do exercises 1 and 2, and you students, you can do exercises 3 and 4. Yeah, so think about how you can share things between your students if it's obvious that they don't all need to do everything that's in the unit. So, first idea is involving your students more in the course book and what they do in the course book. Second idea is about questions and encouraging students to ask more questions. Now, of course, all course books are full of questions because there are texts which students have to read and then they have to answer comprehension questions. and there are texts that they have to listen to, and then they have to answer comprehension questions, which is okay, but the questions are not coming from the students. The questions are coming from the course book. What I mean here is that we need to encourage students to ask questions about the content in the book. And this is great for critical thinking, isn't it? It's getting the students to engage a lot more with the course book content and to start using their brains a little bit more than just answering questions. So here's just an idea of what I mean. This is again from Think for Bulgaria, level A2. So there's a text and it's a travel blog from a guy called Ted. And this particular one is about the non-stop traveler, somebody who likes traveling. I know that it's probably not clear enough for you to read, but on the right of your screen, just a couple of examples of how you could encourage students to ask questions rather than students being forced to answer questions. So this is shifting the focus. We want students to ask questions, give them an opportunity to ask questions. So you might say to the students, what questions do you want to ask Ted about his blog? It doesn't have to be the other way around. Answer questions about the blog. So what we're saying is, what would you like to ask Ted? And in my experience, students will come up with lots and lots of different questions, things that they would like to ask. And immediately you give students an opportunity to ask questions, the engagement increases, the motivation increases. And then we can say to students, read the text and see if any of your questions have actually been answered. And it doesn't matter if they're not. The important thing is that we've given the students an opportunity to ask those questions. So just as an example of how you might do that, this idea of encouraging questions, you could show an introductory picture in the class. In the previous blog, instead of showing them all of the text, just show them the picture. And then students in pairs or small groups, they can think of some questions that they want to ask Ted, and then you can get pairs or small groups to join together. So the discussion is going to be expanded, and students are going to be talking to more people in the classroom. So then they can exchange their questions and decide on more questions that they want to ask. So they're building up a bank of questions. And a couple of example questions I put on the screen there for you. How do you find things to write about in your blog? So this is something to ask the author of the blog, Ted. Where is your blog published? Where can we read your blog? How many years have you been writing your blog for? And so on and so on. So anything is possible. There are no restrictions on the type of questions that students can ask Ted about his blog. And then the fourth stage is going to be that students, they either read the text, or if it's listening, they could listen to the text, check which of their answers are answered, and then provide the answers to their questions. So it's just a variation on using coursebook content, which, instead of it all being coursebook-led and teacher-led, it becomes very much student-led. And when students feel they're more in control of what's going on, of course, the autonomy level increases. And when you feel more autonomous and more independent, of course, your engagement, students' engagement increases, and also their motivation increases as well. A couple of ideas in the chat box about Maria is saying they don't want to open their books. That's very sad, isn't it? But Magdalena has said, well, put it on the screen, project it digitally. Because I think if students see something on a screen, it's very difficult not to look at it, isn't it? It's okay not to look at your book because you can look around. But when something's up there on the screen in front of you, it's very difficult not to actually look at it. So I think the idea that Magdalena has of projecting the book and making them look and reading from there is a really nice idea. Okay, so we've been talking about 6 ideas for teaching teenagers in order to motivate them. The first one we had was getting students engaged in looking at the book and understanding the book. The second one that we've just looked at is about encouraging questions. So my third idea is about setting students up for success. So I put a text on the screen, or a quote if you like, from Hattie and Donahue. And I'm just going to give you 30 seconds or so to read that. And you can see that I've taken out 6 words, which you're going to guess. Not yet. Please don't write anything yet. Just have a look at the text and try and understand it. So please don't give any answers yet. But this quote from Hattie and Donahue is talking about the importance of making sure that students understand how they can be successful. Students need to know what they need to do in order to be successful. When are they going to get that magic tick? When are they going to get the teacher to say, good job, well done? What do they actually need to do? And again, going back to the point I made earlier, unfortunately, as a class, we tend to have the same success criteria for all students. But I think we need to consider whether or not that's what we should be doing. Maybe we can have different criteria for different students, different success criteria for different students. It's not fair, is it, to treat everybody the same? Because everybody's not the same and their abilities are different. I know when we get to assessment, it's a different story, but with in terms of formative assessment in the classroom, I think we can have different levels, if you like, of what we would agree is successful for individual students. Now, I know this is quite tricky, trying to think of the 6 words, but you know I love you dearly, so those are the 6 words, but in the wrong order, of course, they're mixed up. So have another look. And now, if you wish, you can start typing in the chat box. Please put the number as well as what you think the answer is in the chat box. So anybody like to guess what number 1 is? Any guesses for number 1? Ellie says specific. Alexandra, put the number as well, please, just so I know which one you're doing. Marilena says when. Okay, so we've got 3 different answers. Ugh. But that's fine, that's fine. More people are saying how. Alexandra, how. Christina, how. Okay, let's have a look. Yes, number 1 is how. So too often students may know the learning intention, but do not know how the teacher is going to judge their performance. In other words, the students don't know what they need to do in order to be successful. Carrying on, or how the teacher knows. Number 2, everybody is saying when. Let's have a look. Yes, or how the teacher knows when or whether students have been successful. So this whole idea of clarity about success. What does success actually mean? How do I show it, and how is the teacher going to understand that I've been successful? So the second paragraph begins, the success criteria need to be as what and what as possible. So I'm sorry, I don't know your name because I can't decipher that, but I've got clear, specific, yeah, from several people. Let's have a look. Yeah, clear and specific as possible, as this enables the teacher and learner to, number 5, easy peasy, number 5, monitor, says Alexandra, yeah, and Marilena, yeah, let's have a look. To monitor progress, so number 6 must be attain the intended notions of success. Okay, so I'll just give you a bit of time to have another look at that. Too often students may know the learning intention, in other words, what they need to do, but do not know how the teacher is going to judge their performance. So I know what I need to do, but how am I going to be judged? How am I going to be judged? What are the success criteria? So the success criteria need to be clear and specific, and we need to give them to the student. We need to say, this is what I want you to do, and this is how you're going to be judged on your success. And if I know what the success criteria is, then I can monitor myself. during the lesson, and the teacher can monitor myself as well. And I'll know whether or not I've reached that particular point. So here are some examples of success criteria. And on the right of the screen, you can see some sample material from Think. So we have a text, and in the yellow box, it says read the article again and listen. In your notebook, mark the sentences true or false. And then there's also a vocabulary activity as well. So on the left of your screen, in the green boxes, we've got 3 possible success criteria descriptions. So the first one, today we're going to complete a reading activity. The second one, our aim for this class is to complete a true-false reading activity centered on ghost towns. We're going to focus on finding specific information. And then the third one, our aim today is to develop our finding specific information skill through a reading text centered on ghost towns with true-false questions. There are also some vocabulary questions, and since the last time we did this activity, the class got an average of 3 out of 6 correct. So today, let's aim for 4 out of 6. So my question is, which criterion, 1, 2, or 3, is better, do you think? And already I can see, I'm sorry, I can't say your names, but yes, you're all saying 3, 3, 3 is the best. Of course, 3 is the best, because remember what we said previously. Let me just go back to the previous screen. The second paragraph, the success criteria need to be as clear and specific as possible, as this enables the teacher and learner to monitor progress throughout the lesson. And that's what we're trying to do with success criteria. I think, and I'm not criticizing you, please don't get me wrong, please, I would never criticize you, but I think teachers generally, not just, you know, gosh, it's 100 people today nearly, not just the ones who are here today, but I mean globally, I think we probably tend to say, today we're going to complete a reading activity, and we maybe don't give students much more information. I guess we sort of expect students to understand what it is that they're going to be doing. But it's much fairer and much better and much more motivating. And remember, that's what we're talking about today is motivation. It's much more motivating if we give students a lot more information about what it is that they're going to be doing. Now, I always get myself into trouble when I say this, but I don't think there's anything wrong in telling the students in their first language what the success criteria are, and then going back into English. Because it's very important that students understand success criteria, even at very, very low levels. And if you look at the amount of text and the amount of information in that third one, you may be thinking, my students are not going to really understand that. So why not just give it to them in L1, and then, of course, immediately switch back into English? But I may be getting myself into trouble by saying that. Continuing on this idea of success, I think we've already established that if a student is successful, they're going to be motivated. And if they're motivated, they're going to be more successful. And if they're going to be more successful, then of course, they're going to be more motivated. So what we need to be doing is making sure that we give these clear and succinct success criteria and pointing out what the lessons are, the lesson aims are. We need also to allow for some negotiation of these success criteria where possible. And I'm going back to the idea of differentiation. Remember what I said earlier, that, I mean, I don't know how many students you have in a class. Maybe you can just tell me quickly in the chat box. What's a normal number of students in a typical Bulgarian classroom? Okay, so fewer than 30, yeah, mid-20s up to, okay, all right. This is the same that I got in the Czech Republic last week. I was getting exactly the same numbers. Okay, all right, that's great, yeah. So it's not an enormous number of students, but it's still quite, you know, a healthy size. And there's no way that all the students can be meeting the same success criteria. So you need to think as I mentioned earlier, how can you do a little bit of differentiation? Is it fair to ask all the students to write 100 words when some of them can't? Why not say to some students, you don't have to do 100, you only have to do 50, and then over time you can start building it up. The third point to remember here is that we need to move away from expecting everything to be correct and everything to be accurate. It's just not possible. There's no way that you can ever achieve it. None of us, including myself, none of us gets everything correct, whether it's in language or in any element of our lives. We always make mistakes. And of course, students are bound to make more mistakes because they're students, because they're learning. And you know all of the psychology about we learn from our mistakes and we learn from other people's mistakes. You know, so there is an element of it of we should be encouraging students and not putting them down when they make mistakes. Unfortunately, a lot of what we do in the classroom, or a lot of what we do in our course books, is based on language development. But let's not forget the fluency side of language development, and not just think about accuracy. Right, so that's our third idea, is making students aware of success criteria. That was our third idea. So let's move on to the fourth idea. And fourth idea is about choice, allowing students an element of choice in the classroom. And this goes back to what we've already said this morning about differentiation. It also goes back to tip number 1, which was about letting students look at the course book at the beginning of the school year and allowing them to pick things that they particularly like. I'm just going back to the chat box because there's lots of stuff coming in. Biljana says, I always tell my students that the main objective is to communicate and to be able to understand, not to speak perfectly. Good job, Biljana. Yeah. Lots of people are mentioning the word psychologist. I don't know if you mean the teacher needs to be a psychologist or you need a psychologist. And lots of stuff on numbers as well. Okay, brilliant. Thanks. Keep the comments coming in. I'll get to them as best I can. So what we're saying here is that we need to give students choices. Now, I believe that many teachers panic when somebody says to them, give your students choices, because as soon as you give choice, you're losing control. But if you look carefully at what I've written on the screen, number 4, provide directed choices. In other words, the students are not having a real choice. It's the teacher who is deciding what the choice should be, and then giving that choice to the students. So if it was an undirected choice, in other words, if you just said to students, you can do anything you want, of course it would be total chaos. Then you would never do that. But what you can do is provide a directed choice. So here's an example of what I mean. Teacher says to the student, do you want to do your homework? Sorry, not teacher, parent. Parent says to the child, do you want to do your homework or clean your room first? Now, the parent wants both of those things to be done, but she doesn't really care which one the child does first. And this is what we mean by a directed choice. And this is why it's a good question, because the child thinks they have a choice, but they don't really. All they really have a choice in is which one they do first and which one they do second. And we can transfer this same approach into the classroom. So you can say to your students, would you like to do the reading first, or would you like to do the grammar first? Would you like to do that exercise first, or would you like to do that exercise first? So immediately students feel that they've got some autonomy and some control over what they're doing. And of course, if they feel they have control, and if they feel independent and autonomous, then their motivation is more likely to go up. Just very quickly, Biljana says, I always tell my students that the main objective is communicate to me. Yes, exactly. Yeah, brilliant. So in reality, how can we do this? Obviously, giving learners a choice is incredibly important, because it builds up respect, it builds up rapport, it builds up that relationship with the teacher. And, you know, this workshop is about motivation, so it doesn't matter if I keep repeating myself, but all of this will lead to increased motivation and engagement. And we know that when motivation goes up, success goes up. Of course it does. The second point on the screen, I mean, it goes back to the picture with the parent and the child, but you need to think about how you can build in choice into your lessons, and think about choices which are going to help not just the individual student, but the whole class as well. A very easy way that you can do this is to think about workstations. Workstations around the classroom, different people doing slightly different things, but everybody does everything. So you could have pairs or groups of students, they complete one activity and they move on to, sorry, there's a typo there, not more on the next, but it should be move on the next. I saw a lovely example of this last week in Prague. I was lucky to go to a state school and I went to a couple of primary classes, and the teacher had set up the classroom with different workstations. So this was I can't remember exactly what they were, but one workstation was a reading section and there were books, a little library, and then another section was, for example, a creativity section, and there was glue and there was paper and there were scissors and drawing materials and so on. So students would spend some time in the reading station, finish, and then they go on to another station and so on and so forth. And as Ellie says, choices make them feel free citizens and integrate into society. Yes, that's exactly what we want. You're exactly right, Ellie. So this is really easy to set up in a classroom. You don't need loads and loads of extra resources. The example I've given you on the screen, obviously the students are doing a unit on travel. Maybe it could be the one we saw earlier, the blog about travel, never stopping their travel. So one group could be listening to a song and completing the words in the text, in the lyrics. You've already mentioned in the chat right at the beginning that understanding lyrics is a really good motivator. And then another group could be listening to somebody talking about a very strange travel experience, and then another group could be reading a story. So that's one way that you could introduce choice into the classroom. Here's another way you can do it. This is a lesson junction. So, sorry, let me just go back. With the previous one, everybody does everything. If you finish that one, go to this one. Finish that one, go to this one. But this idea is slightly different. It's the same activities, but students choose where they want to go next. So you could have more than one group of students working on the same activity. Another way you can expand this is give your students what we call a choice board. And of course, you can have as many choices or as few choices as you want. And you can recreate the choices in the boxes to suit your own particular context or whatever it is that they're doing. But this is an example of something you could use with a text. It's about people that students admire. So we've got, I think it's 4 different students talking about people who they admire most. So all the students in the class are reading the same text, but then we give them the choice board and students can choose what it is that they want to do from the choice board. As I say, I've given you a choice board of 9 things, but it doesn't mean that the students have to have 9. It could be 6, it could be 3. You know, depending on what you think is manageable with your students and what it is that you want your students to do. I hope that makes sense. Here's another way that you can provide directed choices. This is an activity, typical coursebook activity. And one way that you can provide directed choice is tell the students to only answer the questions which are circled. So 2, 3, 4, and 6. They don't have to do 1 and 5. Or students can either do the odd or the even numbered questions. Or students work in pairs and one student does 1, 2, 3 and the other one does 4, 5, 6. Or one student does the odd and the other one does the even. And the last idea here, ask the students to write more questions with different phrases for their partner to answer. So these are really quick, really easy ways that you can throw some choice at students. And honestly, the impact on students is going to be significant. I'm going to go back to what Ellie said in the chat box. Choices make them feel like free citizens. Choices make them feel like free students. It makes them feel like they have control and autonomy. And as we keep saying, if they feel they've got control, if they feel they've got autonomy, then their motivation is going to go up. And of course, it takes the pressure off you, the teacher. As soon as you start giving the students autonomy and they become more independent, then the lesson becomes much, much more student-centered. Okay, so we've had 4 ideas. Here's our 5th one. And the 5th idea is that we get students' feedback at the end of an activity or at the end of the class or the lesson or whatever it might be. And it's really important that you get feedback. The problem with teaching, not just English, but teaching anything, or even working with teachers like I do, there's never enough time, or we think there's never enough time. And it's possible that we ask students to do activities, we ask students to do things in the classroom, to do activities. Oh no, we haven't got time to finish. I'm sorry. Maybe we can finish this tomorrow or next week or next year. And that's actually very demotivating, isn't it? As a student, you've put in a lot of hard work. You've done what the teacher said, and then, oh, there isn't time to finish it. So what was the point in doing it? You're not meeting the success criteria, so it's a real demotivator. So do make sure that you're able to give learners feedback, even if they haven't finished what it was that you wanted them to do. Give them feedback on what they've done up to that point in the activity. Let's also get feedback from students on what they've done in the book. Not just on the activities themselves, but what they actually produced themselves. So maybe there are things that could be changed in the book. Maybe there are things that could be changed in what they actually did, in the way that the activity, in the way that they carried out the activity. Okay, it's not something that they're going to be able to do again, but you're going to be teaching that book again. You're going to be teaching that unit again. So take on board what the students are telling you about the content. Because then when you teach the unit again with a different class, you can take that on board and you may find that it has a very positive impact on the next class that you teach. Obviously, the end of the class, the end of a lesson, this is where you can be carrying out your formative assessment. You can be telling your students how they've done. And as I say, that links in with giving them feedback on what they've done. And a 4th point here, make sure that you're asking students reflective questions, not just comprehension questions, but asking students questions which get them to think more critically. Ellie is saying, yeah, if students feel independent, then they'll become more creative and they'll become more inventive, they'll become more reasonable. And through the feedback, they become more judgeful and more thoughtful. Absolutely, Ellie, lovely point, really nice. So how can we build in reflective questions? Well, there are loads of different ways that you can do this, and the course books do them. Just 3 examples on the screen. Can do, and course books at the end of the units. Now I can do this. Now I can do this. Tick the smiley face that matches your self-evaluation. Prove it. So students have to give proof of their abilities. And of course, you can use 3, 2, 1. You've seen it, my doing it with you, but you could also do it with students. Okay, students, give me 3 words that you learned in today's lesson. Students, give me 2 sentences using the new words that you learned today. And students, give me one question that you have about the lesson, or 1 word that you're still not sure about. So getting their questions through reflection, getting their feedback at the end of a lesson or a unit or a class or whatever it is through reflective questions, because this will build up their motivation. And do remember, the ending of something is much, much more important than anything else that students learn in a class. So if your class finishes, that's what students are going to remember. Not the video you showed at the beginning, but how the lesson ended. So think about using technology to finish off a lesson. Things like Kahoot and Quizlet and Bamboozle, or showing a video, or doing something interactive at the end, because that's what's really going to, that's what the students are going to go away with. They're really going to go away on a high. So that's my 6th tip out of everything. Right, so we've had to think about what we think about teaching teenagers and what motivates them and what engages them. We've also had a little think about why teenagers learn and what their motivations are. And we've also just had a look at 6 ideas for creating the right motivational conditions for teaching teenagers. So which is your favorite one of those 6? Which one is your favorite, and which one do you think you can take into the classroom without too much effort? Because I know you're all very, very busy. So which is your favorite idea? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6? Yeah, Christine, I think that's a nice one. Let me just put them up on the screen so because you might be struggling to remember them. Those are the 6 that we did. Yeah. So we've got 3 different ones so far. Good. Yeah. 4 different ones. It's really nice to see. Really nice to see. Yeah, it seems that you like the choice idea. Yeah. Don't say thank you. I haven't finished yet. We've got a few more minutes. All of them, but choices is the best. Yeah, I like that. I'm a great fan of differentiation and letting students decide or think they're deciding, and the workstations as well. Okay, so let's try and wrap it up. And I think you're all probably aware of think, pair, share. Just quickly, give me some yeses in the chat box or thumbs up. Do you all know what think, pair, share is? Maya, do you think they know what think, pair, share is?
I think they do.
Yeah. Okay, think, pair, share is a strategy where, first of all, you get individual students to think about something. So they just work on their own. Okay, on your own, think about a question or about this or about that. Think. And then pair, they obviously join somebody and they share their ideas. And then think, pair, the third one, share. The pairs open up to the whole class, and then the idea is shared with the whole class. So what I'm going to show you now is a think, pair, share reflection activity, which is actually for you. You don't need to put loads of stuff in the chat, but I just want to show you as an example of how think, pair, share can be used as a reflection at the end. So just think about these questions. Of course, if I was with you in Bulgaria, sitting in a room with you, we could really do this and it would be great. But it doesn't work quite so well online. But hopefully one day very soon I'll be with you and we can do it together. So what ideas from today's session were new for you? This is for you to think about individually. Were there any ideas that you feel you could adapt? And what questions do you still have about teaching teenagers? So this is the first part of the think, pair, share activity. So you think individually. And maybe you can do this, once today's session is over. If you meet up with your colleagues, you could actually try this out with your colleagues who've attended today. So independently, you do this. Individually, you do this. Then, for the pair part, share your answers with a partner. And I've just put the questions up there again. So now you talk to your partner about those 3 questions. And then for the final part, the share, in pairs or groups, write one idea that you plan to implement. And if you're doing this online, you could write it in the chat box. If there's no chat, in small groups, share your ideas and reasons why. And here's one example. I'm going to try using a choice board, as I think that my learners will enjoy having more control. This being said, I feel that it might be a little difficult to manage, but I'm willing to try. So we've just seen an example of a think, pair, share activity, which you can do in the classroom. Very easy to implement, very, very easy to implement. And it's also obviously a great motivator for your students. Okay, now you can say thank you, because I'm saying thank you. I really appreciate all your thanks. It's really very, very kind of you. Thank you. Okay, I know you're all busy. And
okay, Peter. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're very welcome. It's been really great. I've loved working with you.
I think it was a pleasure for all of us. You've managed to shake our minds, so to have a very nice ending of the day. So
great.
Thank you all for attending this webinar.
Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you. Thank you.
Bye.
Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Bye.